The First Industrial Revolution, which took place from the late 18th century to the early 19th century, marked a significant turning point in history, transforming economies, societies, and the way people lived and worked. This period saw a shift from agrarian economies, where agriculture was the predominant source of income, to industrialized and urban economies, characterized by the mass production of goods and the rise of factories. Origins and causes. The Industrial Revolution began in Britain around 1760 and was driven by a combination of factors. Agricultural improvements, advancements in farming techniques, such as crop rotation and selective breeding, led to increased agricultural productivity. The Agricultural Revolution created surplus food, which supported a growing population and freed many laborers to seek work in cities. Technological innovations. The period saw significant technological advancements, most notably in the textile industry. Inventions such as the spinning jenny, 1764 by James Hargreaves, the water frame, 1769 by Richard Arkwright, and the power loom, 1785 by Edmund Cartwright, revolutionized the production of textiles, allowing for faster and cheaper manufacturing. Natural resources. Britain was rich in natural resources, particularly coal and iron ore. The availability of coal fueled steam engines which powered factories, locomotives, and ships, while iron was essential for building machinery, tools, and infrastructure. Transportation improvements. Developments in transportation, such as the construction of canals and later railways, facilitated the movement of raw materials and finished goods. The Stockton and Darlington Railway, opened in 1825, was one of the first railways to utilize steam locomotives and demonstrated the potential of rail transport for industrial goods. Capital and investment. The growing wealth from trade, colonialism, and banking in Britain provided the necessary capital for investment in new technologies and factories. Entrepreneurs sought to innovate and maximize profits, which further spurred industrial growth. Key developments. The First Industrial Revolution is often associated with several key developments. Textile industry. The textile industry was at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. The introduction of mechanized spinning and weaving processes led to mass production of fabrics, reducing the time and cost of textile production. Steam power. The development of the steam engine by James Watt in the late 18th century was a game changer. It allowed for the mechanization of various industries, including mining, textiles, and transportation. Steam engines were used to power machines and locomotives, leading to increased productivity. Iron and steel production. Innovations in iron production, such as the use of coke instead of charcoal, allowed for cheaper and more efficient iron production. The Bessemer process, developed later in the 19th century, would further revolutionize steel production, but the groundwork was laid during the First Industrial Revolution. Factory system. The factory system emerged as a new mode of production, concentrating labor and machinery in one location. This system allowed for greater efficiency and output, but it also changed the nature of work, as workers were subjected to long hours, low pay, and often unsafe conditions. Urbanization. The rise of factories led to mass migration from rural areas to urban centers as people sought jobs. Cities grew rapidly, leading to overcrowded living conditions, inadequate sanitation, and various social challenges. Social impact. The First Industrial Revolution had profound social consequences. Labor conditions. Factory work was often grueling, with long hours, 12 to 16 hours a day, low wages, and dangerous conditions. Child labor was widespread, as children were employed for their small size and ability to work in confined spaces. Rise of the working class. A distinct working class emerged, leading to new social dynamics. Workers began to organize for better conditions, wages, and rights, setting the stage for future labor movements. Women in the workforce. Many women entered the workforce during this period, often in textile factories. However, they faced discrimination and were paid significantly less than their male counterparts. Social reform movements. The harsh realities of industrial life spurred social reform movements aimed at improving labor conditions, advocating for child labor laws, and addressing poverty and inequality. Impact on family structure. The shift to factory work altered family dynamics, as many family members, including women and children, contributed to the household income. This change affected traditional roles and relationships. Economic changes. The first industrial revolution fundamentally transformed economies. Shift to capitalism. The rise of industrial capitalism characterized this period with a focus on profit, investment, and competition. This economic model replaced feudal and agrarian economies. Global trade. Industrialized nations began to dominate global trade, exporting manufactured goods and importing raw materials. This shift had lasting effects on global economic structures and relationships. Investment in infrastructure. The need for improved transportation and communication led to significant investments in infrastructure, including railways, roads, and telegraphs, which facilitated further industrial growth. Market expansion. The production of goods at a larger scale allowed for expanded markets, both domestically and internationally. Mass production reduced costs and increased availability, contributing to consumer culture. The first industrial revolution was a transformative period that laid the groundwork for modern industrial society. It brought about technological advancements, economic changes, and significant social upheaval. While it led to increased production and economic growth, it also resulted in challenging labor conditions and social issues that would require reform. The legacy of the first industrial revolution continues to shape our world today, influencing how we produce goods, organize labor, and understand economic systems. The revolution not only changed industries, but also had lasting effects on social structures, paving the way for subsequent industrial and technological revolutions that would further reshape human life and work in the centuries to follow.